Just making sure.
Are we on?
Yes, we are. Hello, Queen.
Hello, lovely. How are you, Razan?
I'm doing great. It's a sunny day in Dublin, and I don't know, just the energy and the good mood comes whenever the it's a sunny day in Dublin. We don't get a lot of these sunny days, so we're enjoying it. How are you doing?
I have to say, it is a beautiful sunny day here in Aylesbury and in the UK. And yeah, when you have grey days, it kind of pulls the whole energy down. But a beautiful sunshine day, which we've got blue skies, fluffy clouds. It's beautiful. So I'm super happy today. Great energy.
I love that. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone who's joining us today. Today, I promise you, we're going to have an epic session because we have a very, very special guest today. I have Madeline McQueen with me. I love to call her the Queen because she is the Queen. And I will let her introduce herself.
Hi.
But I'm going to give a short introduction about how me and Madeleine crossed paths 2 years ago. 2 years ago.
2 years ago, yeah.
I was working for Google at that time, and I was selected to be part of a leadership program, and that is built, structured, and led by Madeleine and David McQueen. And I was a bit skeptical about it, to be honest. Like, I didn't know what to expect. I went into the room where there was so many senior people, like I'm talking about VB level, director levels. And usually, when you get into a room like that, you just get intimidated. You don't know what to say, how to behave. You don't want to say the wrong thing. Um, I went into the room, and the energy of that session was insane. And they got everyone in that room talking. And that was like, it was just insane. And after that date, everyone has to select their coach. I decided to go with Madeleine, and we started a journey of 12 months. And I don't know, when you know that someone had been sent to you in a certain time because you need that person. That what
Mm.
happens to me. I went into a 12-month journey with Madeleine, and it was nothing short of transformational. And I don't like that kind of shaped a lot of things that I did after this journey. And we'll talk about it as we go, but I am so honored and privileged and so excited to have this session and introduce Madeleine to people who don't know her, who didn't meet her before, because I think everyone need to meet Madeleine, and everyone need to have their own version of Madeleine.
Mm.
So here is today's session. I'm so happy to have this, and stick around. You will have an amazing session with us. Madeleine, I'm going. This is my part of this is the Madeleine I know, but I want you to kind of introduce yourself to people,
Okay.
what you do, and a bit of your background, and then we will take it from there.
All right. So first, I just want to say thank you so much, Roseanne, for such a lovely introduction. It has been a beautiful journey working with you, and I got the privilege of working with you. And obviously, and here we are. You never know when you start working with somebody where that's going to take you, and it's beautiful that it's taken us to here and beyond. So, who am I? So, my name is Madeline McQueen. I run a personal development company, specifically, but not exclusively, for women in leadership. And I am a multi-award winning executive coach, a speaker. I run programs, a bit like the one that Roseanne was on, in corporates. And I also host as well. And I am very passionate about helping people to see who they really are. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, I sat down and I was like, what, there's so much turmoil in the world. And I was like, what is my purpose? And my purpose, I really sat down and worked it out. And I was like, this is what it is. It is to help people see who they are, to see their possibilities, to see their power, to get their own clarity and their confidence, to be able to operate in their world as best as they possibly can, so they can impact the rest of the world. I have a feeling that we have lost Roseanne, but I'm sure she will be back. And so I'll just keep telling you. So I work with organizations in Admiral Comms. I work in organizations in tech and in finance, and they are my main industries, but I do work in other industries as well. And as I say, it's about supporting people on the journey, supporting organizations and their teams, especially leaders. I think she's coming back. So that's me. I'll tell you a little bit personally. So some of you may know my husband, some of you may not. So I'm married to David McQueen. This year we'll have been married for 30 years, together for 37. We have 2 children. Well, they're not children anymore. They are 23 and 27. And for me, I love life because it's the only one I've got. So I just want to make sure that I love it as best as I possibly can. I've had the privilege to work with amazing clients in amazing organizations, household names that you would know. And, even from being on stage, introducing amazing people on stage, like Steve Wozniak and Gary Kasparov and those sorts of people. So yeah, I'm really fortunate. I'm the youngest of 6 girls as well. So yeah. And I've had my own journey, and I think we all have our own journey. We've all got our own stories, we've all got our own narratives, and we've all got our own purpose for being here. So that's me, Roseanne. I filled in whilst you were having your challenges. Oh, Roseanne, I cannot hear you. We have a slight volume issue.
Okay. Can you hear me
Oh,
now?
I can
I
hear
think
you now.
I muted myself.
That's fine. It's Friday morning.
Cool.
We can do
So
that.
I was saying we named this session On the Room and Rewrite the Rules, because I think one thing that you taught me during our 12 months journey is to rewrite the rules. I had a lot of stuff that I like, a lot of constraints that I put on myself. There was a lot of things that I thought I would not be able to do, and you taught me how to rewrite the rules. So I want us to start with, you call the ladies brilliant. So I want you to start with telling us, what is a brilliant woman and why it's important to rewrite our own rules.
Okay, so this word, brilliance. Let me tell you how this word came about in this ecosystem. So a few years back, my husband and I were around the dining room table with our children, our nieces and our nephews. And some of them we dialed in and we asked the question, what's your superpower? And we went around the room, and like my husband, we're like, he is a cult leader. That's his superpower. He's definitely cult leader type. My nephew, we said that he was the eternal lingerer. Like he was always lingering in a corner, gaining all the information through time. My daughter, Master Chef, or we call her Blaster Chef because she destroys even though she creates. And you know, we were going through everybody, and they said, "What's your superpower?" And I just instantly went, "Brilliance." You know, I shine so bright that, you know, I repel the baddies and I draw in the goodies. And this word about around brilliance for me is seeing the light that you have within, and we all have it. And I think that for women especially, we are often what's the word? I think coerced, most probably, conditioned as well, to dim our light, to, you know, pipe down, be a bit quiet, that, you know, even to dumb down our intelligence. And for me, that brilliance should never be shut down. It should never be dulled. We should be able to operate in our full genius as women. I mean, as human beings, but certainly as women, due to the issues that there are, the societal issues that there can be that we experience. And so for me, a brilliant woman is a woman who recognizes her skills, her gifts, her talents, her experience, what she brings to the table, and ultimately recognizes her light, and how understanding how that light has a positive impact on her world, and, as I said before, the world outside of her. And so the more we do that, the more we actually encourage other people to own that brilliance. And this world certainly needs far more light than it, you know, because we've got a lot of darkness going on. And the more of us that step into that, the more of us that recognize that we don't need to apologize for who we are. We need to step into who we are so that we can have the impact that we're here to have, the better our world will be. And so then when that comes to rewriting the rules, for me, you know, as I said, I'm the youngest of 6 girls. And so there's always another woman who's got a voice. When there's 6 of you, you have to be able to stand out, right? You have to be able to own your voice. You need to be able to speak up, or you will just get left behind. And I think for us as women, we can't afford anymore, not for a moment longer, to allow ourselves to operate on other people's terms. I talk about this a lot. We have to operate on our own terms, accept our own brilliance, and then really, truly step into it. And that might mean, and often does mean, rewriting the rules of keeping quiet, or not having boundaries and doing everything everybody else tells you to do and not doing what you know you should be doing for yourself. That then means that rewrite the rules in the boardroom, you know, where, you know, I'm not taking out my pad and pen. I'm going to sit up, I'm going to listen, I'm going to talk, and I'm going to walk in like I own the room, not like, oh, I don't know if I deserve to be here. There are so many unwritten rules that we live by that it's time to rewrite, because we have just as much right to operate space, to occupy space in this world as anyone else. You know, and we are 50% or so of the world's population. We deserve to be here. Oh, you've gone mute again. I can't hear you, Razan.
Myself.
I keep doing, yes.
I keep muting myself.
Okay.
So I was saying we have our own demons. Like, before we even go to the other people in the room, we as women has our own demon. Like, sometimes we don't recognize our own brilliance. Sometimes we are being conditioned to downplay these brilliance. And sometimes we being taught and conditioned from a very young age that talking about brilliance is arrogancy, is being full of ourselves. Like, we kind of, and then with the time, we kind of either forgot how brilliant we are, or we know, but we cannot speak loud about it. It's like we Like, how do you look at that? How do you deal with that?
I think that's so true. I think that there are two sides to the coin. One side is patriarchy, all the conditioning, all of those things. And then I also say, I wrote a blog post a few years back called "Is it the enemy or the inner me?" And I think sometimes the inner me is our enemy. The way that will we will not face ourselves. We're not happy maybe with what we're experiencing, but we're not going to do the work, right? Because there's work to be done. And that work is sitting down and spending time with yourselves. I think this is the biggest game changer for all of us, which is spending some time getting to know who you actually are. We're very quick to go from, we did this amazing thing, like literally knocked it out of the park, and we don't pause, we go straight to the next thing. And we're like, oh, how am I going to get to do that? I don't know if I can do it. And it's like, hold on, you just did this amazing thing, but you didn't take any time to work out what that was, what your skills were, what you've learned, how you've grown, how great you are. And I think that the time that we can spend to get to know ourselves gives us, I call it evidence-based confidence, or ammunition, the facts, the receipts, in order for us to be able to move ourselves forward and overcome some of the self-limiting beliefs that we have. We need evidence to battle I call it the monster within, right? That monster that we need to manage, that tells us, oh, maybe you're not good enough, or maybe, oh, just keep quiet, or no, don't say anything, or don't ask a stupid question. And it's like, well, how, even taking the time out to go, how is that serving me? How is that really serving me? And what do I really want to say instead? Like, what do I even want for myself? I think that's such an important question. It's a question I ask a lot in the coaching room. It's a question I ask a lot in training rooms. What do you want? And it's a big question too. But until you sit down and get to explore, do some forensic digging around who you are, how you feel, what you like, what you don't like. Like, I think this is another thing. Many of us don't know our negotiables and our non-negotiables. And so that means that we're at other people's mercy, because then we can't create boundaries. And without boundaries, we're pretty much lost. So they're my thoughts on that.
How do we get there, Madeleine? It's difficult. Like, it's just sometimes it's sure you sometimes we are under so much weight. There's so
Mm,
much that we are kind of like buried under. There's work expectations, there's family expectations, there's society expectations, and there's a lot of conditioning.
mm.
um how do someone who's buried under that, just what's the first step that they can do
Yeah.
in order to move on the right direction?
I think, I truly believe that if you're teachable, you're reachable. If you're reachable, you're teachable. Like, it works both ways, right? So you can't move forward, like you can't leverage what you do not know. So your first step is to actually take a pause. Because if you're constantly running, constantly moving, constantly at it, you have no brain space, no time, no focus to be able to even recognize, oh my goodness, I'm just going, but this isn't
Recognize,
working.
oh my goodness, I'm just going, but
So the first thing is to pause. I think that's your very first step. The next thing then is to ask yourself a question. I'm a lover of questions. I think that there's a great quote, and I can't remember who it's by, but it might be David Cooper Ryder, but I'm not sure. But it basically says, questions create our worlds. Good questions create our worlds. And so by just asking a different question, you can make the change. But you can't make a change if you don't pause, because you won't have the time to ask yourself a question. There are lots and lots of resources. You know, it might be, okay, I'm going to make a decision that I'm going to read something, a new book, like a personal development book. I'm going to engage a coach. You may not be ready for a coach at that stage, right? I'm going to watch something on YouTube, and there's so many amazing things that you can watch and experience. But the first step is to pause, because then when you pause, you can ask yourself a question: what's going on here, and am I happy with it? And if you're not happy with it, then the question is, well, then if I'm not happy with this, what do I really want? What would I like my life to look like? And what needs to change? And these are like your initial questions that are going to help you. If you notice, all of these questions are open questions. They're who, what, where, when, why, and how. I call them 6 ladies that get answers, because they force you not to just say, oh, yes, no, or I don't know. You have to have a fuller answer, and it makes you access a different part of your brain to get an answer. So you need to pause and go, this isn't working. I am exhausted. I'm under pressure. I'm managing so many things. What needs to change? And sometimes that might not be everything might need to change, right? That's the gospel truth. But you can't change everything in one fell swoop. So then my thing would always be, if you could change one thing that would make a really big difference right now, what would that one thing be? And I think if you can ask yourself, pause and ask yourself the one thing question, that will start opening up. It's like a bud, a flower, and it's closed, right? But it gets the right sunlight, it gets the right environment, and it just starts to open. And as it opens, more petals come out, and it just becomes more beautiful. This is the process of personal development, which is allowing yourself the right conditions to open fully. Mute. You mute.
I love that. Um, I love that. Just taking a pause and asking the right questions. And I think one of your brilliance as a coach is asking the person the right questions. Like, I remember every time we had a session and you just asked me a question that I was like dumbfounded after that. I was like, that's a very simple question, but I never actually had the chance to sit and ask myself. Like,
Yes.
we run through life, like we are just on a battle. We wake up in the morning, we go to work, and then at work we deal with the same issues, same people, same drama, and then responsibility, and we just juggling and we don't stop. Like, even like we don't stop. And I think that was like, and I know we're not going that way, but I remember one day I came to one of your sessions and I was talking about having to take care of so many people at the same time. And you gave me a brilliant analogy about the boat. And I would love for you to share it with people who are listening to us today. Is when someone have too much on their plates and they
Yes.
are having to take care of so many things in their life, what I want you to tell them about the boat analogy, and then we're going to go to
No, it's
something
funny,
else.
Rizan, because sometimes it's really strange. Analogies come to me in the moment. And so I don't always use an analogy with every person. It literally is, the analogy comes for that person, that situation. But I remember you were taking care of so many people. And in effect, I think I remember saying to you, imagine that you're on a boat and you have all of these people, like a small boat, all of these people in your boat, and your boat is sinking because you've added way too many things and people. You can barely row it because it's so heavy, that the water's starting to lap in and you are feeling overwhelmed by it. You're wondering, you're trying to get some water out, but you can't get the water out because the boat is too heavy. And I think this is exactly the situation that we find, especially as women. And what we'll do, because underlyingly, a lot of us are looking for validation externally, we will add more things into the boat, hoping that those things will give us some validation, or somebody will notice, hey, you're doing such great things, and tell us that. And actually, we have to ask, what can this boat really carry? And actually, are some of the things or people in this boat things that should be carrying themselves, that shouldn't actually be in my boat? And we will, I think we've also got that, the good daughter syndrome, where we're taking care of everybody in the family. And it's not that we shouldn't be supportive, but there comes the point where grown adults aren't supporting themselves because they're dependent on you. And actually, it's not that they can't support themselves, but now they've become so enabled to depend on somebody else and not take responsibility for themselves, that they are flourishing in some respects, whilst the other person is absolutely drowning. And there comes, and I had another client, funnily, in your cohort. I was like, okay, well, can we just stop? Let's stop. So if you were to stop doing this, if you were to stop adding so many and start taking some of these people and things out of your boat, how much space would you have to start being more buoyant, and also to fill yourself, to find things that lifted you up? So actually, instead of having this drowning boat, when you went to give, you could hand over and give from a full cup, as opposed to giving from a drowning boat. And it was so interesting because I know in that situation we went through all the who's, right? And we started going, oh, they don't need to come out in the boat. And then the boat gets a little bit lighter. That person doesn't need to be in your boat. The boat gets a little bit lighter. I think that it's another exercise that we need to do on our journey to reducing our overwhelm, which is asking ourselves, who are we really truly responsible for? What are we responsible for? And if there's anything else, it's time to, as we would say, cut the fat, right? It's to throw the sandbags out of your boat so that you can actually be more buoyant.
And how do I deal with the guilt, Madeline?
Oh,
Because there's a guilt there, right? How do I deal with it?
there is a guilt. I'm trying to remember what I told you at the time. I think the thing about the guilt thing is, I have to ask myself, I would always ask the question, who benefits from your guilt? Who benefits the most from you feeling and being, bogged down, guilty, feeling like it must be you doing everything? More often than not, it's not you. Somebody else is benefiting. And when you start to, again, it goes back to being forensic and examining who benefits in this situation, and how am I, and where is this guilt sitting? You start to unravel kind of, I think guilt feels like a knot. Does that make sense? Guilt, it's like a really tightly tied knot and rope. And the more you start to unravel it by going, well, who benefits from this? And how is this guilt working for me? And it's actually also I would also say throwing back those questions to those people who want to challenge you, because obviously they are benefiting to have their own responsibility. And in letting go of the guilt, you have to embrace you. As you let go of the guilt, you have to have something to replace it. And replacing it is reminding yourself how worthy and deserving you are of what you're giving to yourself. We're guilty often. The guilt is a construct in our mind. And sometimes nobody's even trying to make us feel guilty. We've just taken on that guilt because we don't want to disappoint people. And actually, we never even asked them whether or not they were okay with doing it for themselves. We like to rescue often, but that rescuing is nobody asked you. Nobody asked you. And so actually, if you let go of the, what's the word? The unrealistic responsibilities, or the unsolicited responsibilities, then actually the guilt fades away quite quickly because it wasn't yours in the first place. And my best phrase for it has been, not my circus, not my monkeys. That has been the thing that has, I've given it to a lot of people to to deal with when you are taking on things that aren't yours. Not my circus, not my monkeys. It has saved me, believe me. I am a recovering fixer. And the more you let go, the more space you find to fill your life with the things you love, the things you enjoy. I remember, I think I tasked you at going and doing something for yourself. I think you went to the cinema. I think you went to the cinema and went and got your nails done.
Yeah, and yeah, but you actually tasked me with more than that. I think what you said to me, I would never remember, because that was a big thing in that I was struggling with, is you actually asked me to write down who is in my boat and why they are in my boat. Are they there because they asked for it? Are
Mm,
they are there because I put them there? And why do I have them in my book? Why am I feeling guilty? Am I feeling guilty because that person cannot take care of themselves if I did not take it? Or I am just feeling guilty because I am just stopping something that I just been doing? So, and that was kind of a big change for me, because that exercise was a tough exercise, because it kind of put me in front of myself. I was like,
mm,
why am I doing certain things for certain people? Is it because they really need it, or because of the good feeling that I am getting out of that act? And that kind of
yeah.
helped me a lot with the guilt kind of thing.
You know,
And yeah, I remember, yeah, you tasked me to do something, and I a concert or something, I remember. And I was like, yeah, I went and did my nails, my hair, my braids, and yeah, I went to the
yeah,
concert.
you do that. You're like, it feels
Um,
so good. It feels so good
yeah,
to
that
do something for me, you know? And I think it's so true. Like, your understanding your own why is really important, because sometimes you don't even know your why, or sometimes the why is nothing to do with everything anybody else, but everything to do with you and what you think you need to do to be a good person. And secondly, sometimes because somebody else may be suffering, we think that we also need to suffer. I remember this now. We also need to suffer. And actually, if we have the opportunity to live well when they don't, then actually we should take that opportunity to live well, because they don't have that opportunity. And so what you are sitting in is a privilege, and you're squandering it, when actually if they could do it, they wouldn't squander it. They would go and use it, you know.
I love that. And I might be, the situation is different, but I think, like, me, the girls I'm friend with, my close friends, the people I crossroad with, every time we as women, it's always about having to juggle too much, questioning
Yes.
ourselves, taking too much responsibility. And I think, having done this exercise, and I hope that people who are listening to us, if they're going through that, they can do that, is having to do that exercise was kind of liberating for me. It wasn't
Yeah.
easy. There was a lot of, like, facing
Yeah.
myself, but it was liberating. And I still grapple with some guilt, but I actually got to say no and taking people out of my boat that they don't need to be there. Madeleine, so we women in leadership in business, we struggle with, the first thing is, I love what you said, like, is it the enemy or it's in me, like the inner me? I love that. We also struggle with another thing at the workplace, and then I'm going to move to high level leadership women and all of that. But at workplace, another thing that we struggle with, the first, they are related but slightly different, which is promoting ourselves,
Mm,
right? So
mm,
the first one is, between us, we're struggling, we grapple with a lot of things. But even when we know how good we are or how good the work that we do, we don't promote ourselves the right way, or sometimes we don't even do it the right way. So I want to talk about this. I want to sit in this space for a while because it's an important place.
mm. The whole thing around promoting yourself, I think the first challenge that we have is that, a lot of us here, self-praise is no recommendation. And so we're waiting for somebody to validate us. And so we think if we work exceptionally hard, and it actually speaks back to the overwhelm, if we work exceptionally hard, if we take on every project, somebody will notice how great we are. Somebody will notice that, oh, we're really good. Oh, we should promote her. Now, that doesn't always work, because actually in the workplace, there is a game to play. And sometimes we don't like to talk about this because we don't want to believe it's real, but it is real. The game of promoting yourself, raising your profile, having the right kind of people who are elevating you, who are evangelists on your behalf. Um, Promotion is strategic, and many of us are not as strategic as we need to be, because we're so deep in the weeds of working, because we believe and we've been told that if we work twice as hard, we will be then recognized. And I don't think it's true. In many cases, it doesn't mean to say that you don't need to work hard, but you also need to work really smart. And that does mean going on a personal development journey. And the journey is not easy. Personal development journeys are hard work, because you've got to face yourself. And it is, I wrote a blog a few weeks back called Facing the Mountain That's You. Like, you are the mountain, nobody else is the mountain, you are the mountain. And so it's important then that you start doing that work. But you also can't promote yourself if you don't know what you're promoting. And promotion, before it becomes before it becomes, an actual promotion in your organization and a pay rise and all those things, you need to understand, you need to start promoting who you are, what you do, how you do it. If you don't know what that is, as I said this earlier, you can't leverage what you don't know. So I encourage people to write a list of their achievements. And it's so interesting. When I ask this, especially in a room, or ask somebody to do it, they may only have a couple of things that they write down. And I'm like, hold on, how many decades have you been on this planet, right? You've made so many different achievements. And this goes back to, you do something great, let's write down what I've done. Like, we get to review time, and we are stuck for what we've done, what we've achieved, because we've not been cataloging it. I think it's really important to catalog what you've done. Once you catalog what you've done, or as you are cataloging what you're doing, you should be socializing it. And so that means highlighting it to your manager, highlighting to your manager's manager, highlighting it in different ways. That might be an email that you send out that you CC in a couple of people. It might be asking about what the incentives are that are around that particular thing that is happening, because sometimes there are internal competitions or spiffs, as you might call them, that you could be getting involved in or putting yourself forward for. It might also be the external side of using your LinkedIn profile to elevate the things that you do and raise your profile in that way. But the truth of the matter is that if you are not talking about it, you cannot expect somebody else will. It also means things like, who's your mentor, internally or externally? Do you have a sponsor within the organization? And when you're going for these kinds of people, you need to not just do it from a taking point of view. Like, what do you also have to offer those people? And when you're sitting with them, is not spending that time talking all about you, but getting to understand what they did. This is why I'll go back to questions like asking, what do I, even from your manager's point of view, what do I need to do? What 3 things do I need to do in order for me to move to my next level, to get a promotion? Now, you can go in and go, so notice the difference. Can I have a promotion? No. Okay, where do you go from there? You've got nowhere to go. What you need to do is ask the questions, and as Steve Covey says, seek first to understand and then be understood, which means finding out what the roots are. Sometimes we don't even know what the roots are, all the possibilities are. And again, you might want to get a coach to help you do that. You might get an internal coach to help you do that. What you might decide to go and speak to the talent team about it. But you need information in order for you to create a strategy, in order for you to promote yourself, right? And I love Dorothy Oku, she's the ex-head of comms for Google Africa. We talked about a personal strategic communication plan, right? So you've worked out who you need, what they need to know, what's great about like your own business case for you to be able to get promoted in the organization, and also understanding what the what's the word? What are the key the KPIs, the key performance indicators that you need to be hitting in order for you to be able to get there. And as I said, ask your manager. So, what are the 3 things that I need to do in order for me to get a promotion? What are the 3 things you did? Not everybody did the 3 things, but what are the 3 things you did in order for you to get a promotion? So if we were sitting here next year, what would I have needed to have done in order for me to have moved to my next level? What would you be saying to me next year? What would you hope to be saying to me next year in my promotion, so that I was in my performance review, so I did get a promotion? And then also speaking to other people, finding out, how does it work? What has happened? But in order to promote yourself, you have to get to know you, what you do, how you do it, the impact that you make. If that has a impact on the ROI, the return on the investment, the bottom line, how that is, and how you are positively impacting, whether it's your department, whether you're an individual contributor and it's the piece of work that you're on, or whether it is the wider organization. But if you don't have your business plan and a sales pitch, you are then at the mercy of other people, hoping. You're living on hope.
I love that. Having a business plan and a sales pitch. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of us don't think of it this way. We don't think of it this way. We always, as you said, we always at the mercy of someone else. We always want someone to see what we've been doing, someone to see our hardworking, long working hours, coming, showing up to work, even though we have been juggling so much or struggling with so much. And we are always looking for validation and appreciation from other people. And when we don't get that, instead of rebelling, we actually start to feel demotivated, frustrated, and we go into a complaining cycle that doesn't
Yes.
take us anywhere.
Yeah.
Uh,
And many of us
Madeleine,
are.
you are
Mhm.
executive coach. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, many of us are digging ourselves into a
No, no,
hole.
you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say that many of us are digging ourselves into a hole that no one's going to take us out of. Because actually, if you're taking on everything and doing all the things, why, as a manager, am I going to move you? You make me look good. You make me look good. So if you make me look good, why am I going to move you? And I think we need to get in the habit of doing our job and stop doing everybody else's. Anyway, go ahead. You were going to say, as an executive coach.
I wanted to say you are an executive coach. You've been on Forbes, you've been coaching top leadership women in Google, Meta, Salesforce, like name it, like big name it. I want you to share with people who are listening to us today, what are the biggest mindset difference that you've seen between those top level, high senior leadership women and women who are on like mid career or just starting? Like, what are the big mindset shift that those women have and help them to get there?
Mm. I said this earlier this week, delivering a program for a large organization. What you got you to that middle management isn't going to get you to executive. Because what's mostly got you there is that whole hard work thing. And don't get me wrong, it's not that women who sit at a high level don't work hard, they do. The big difference is strategic thinking and strategic planning. Strategy and being strategic is the big game changer at those levels. So what does that look like? And secondly, the other thing about that is they recognize that they need support and they're willing to pay for support. So I call it pay to play, pay to be support. You know, when you're sitting at senior leadership level, often your peers are your competition, even though you are all at this level, but there is still, you know, you may or may not, depends on the environment, but you may or may not be able to have certain conversations about your own vulnerabilities with other leaders. And you know, you certainly may not be able to have those conversations with the CEO unless, you know, you're the CEO. But even still, senior leaders tend to have support that allows them to have kind of a touchstone experience, which is being able to bounce off of somebody else, whether that's ideas, whether that's thoughts, whether that's strategic thinking, strategic planning. I will also say senior women have, in general, not all, because sometimes I'm helping them on this, which is strategic planning and thinking time. They are not the same thing. You need time to think about what you're doing, how you're doing it, what needs to be done, who needs to do it, where you're delegating, what resources you've got, who you need, what strategic partnerships you need to be having, what conversations you need to be having with other leaders. And so the real thing that they're doing is living in strategy. And I gave this example to a client once, and I've used it a number of times, because the other thing is delegation. And sitting at this level, you could have 4,000 people under you, but you're not managing 4,000 people. You might be managing 6 people who have people under them and then wider teams. And so one of the things that is really important is, you know, the analogy I use is, say you're at the very top of a building. So let's say you are at the top of the Gherkin, for example. Maybe that's not one of the tallest buildings, but, you know, in London, and you have a 360 view of London. Now, if you are overviewing and you're responsible and your team is out there managing all of the different places and spaces, and there's a building over there that's on fire, that building's on fire and it needs dealing with. If you go down the elevator or the escalator, you know, from the top of that building, you go into that building and you start dealing with the fire, can you see all of London? No, you can't. you can't operate strategically because you've gone and put yourselves in the weeds. You can no longer see because you're now in a building dealing with the problem. Women at high strategic in senior leadership don't go into the building. What they do is they send somebody into the building, because then they can still see all of London. And so they can still see what's going on. They can still see that something's happened over here, or this is going really well. And we have to resist the temptation to do everything and learn to. I have a client who's phenomenal at this, who's going to be speaking at the Brilliant Summit, which is about how to delegate like a badass, right? So that you can literally sit in strategy. We need to learn that strategic planning and thinking, and then planning who will do what. Most people don't have strategic planning in their week, but you should have strategic planning in your week, because if you don't, how are you going to delegate? How are you going to know who needs to do what? And then how are you going to be able to think back on it in order for you to be able to then plan again? Being strategic in your relationships, like who do you need to know? Who are the game players? Who are the people? Who are the blockers? And what do they need? How do they need it? How do you need to engage with them? These are the things that women at senior leadership consider and think about. They're going and having conversations if they're in a global role, or even if they're in a country role. They're going, let me go speak to my equivalent in this country, see what's going on over there, how they're handling it. They are going and speaking to the head of comms, or the the COO or the CMO, or they're going having conversations. They're having conversations before the meeting, so they know strategically where everybody sits. This is one of the big differences between middle level and higher level. Strategy and delegation.
I love that. And I think that's kind of says a lot. When we are in the middle, we got there by hard work. And so we want everything to look very good. And so we kind of keep taking things more and more and more. And we don't kind of realize that at that stage, in order to move to the next level, we need a different set of skills to get us to the next level. Um, I want to talk about a topic that it might be a bit like not a lot of people talk about, but I feel like there's always a gap
Mm,
between women in high senior leadership positions and women in middle senior position. There's and I mentioned this last time. We don't have the women club. There's a men club, but there is no women club. On the contrary, there are a lot of sometimes cat fights, or some kind of, like, I don't know, tripping. So, like, I feel like we don't have a club. Why do you think we don't have a club? Do you agree with me first?
I think we have
And if
clubs.
you, um, why do you
I think
think we don't have a club?
I do think we have clubs. I think there are a number of things. I think that we're more likely to have business clubs than we are sometimes senior leader clubs. I think we do have senior leader clubs. I think sometimes they're quite exclusive. And so it's finding them and then getting involved, and it might be the way that you're invited in. If you are invited in, or whether it's a recommendation, and then you need to know somebody in order to get yourself in there. And I think that is definitely one of the challenges. I think also, here's the truth of it, and you can speak to any woman and she will tell you that most probably another woman blocked her success at some point or another, which is so sad. We're conditioned to be in competition with each other. I remember when I used to work in IT sales, in corporate sales, I'd lose a client maybe. And the reason why I lost a client would be the client that I had maybe got a new CEO, or a new uh, person who was responsible, head of director of purchasing, for example. Now, that director of purchasing or that new CEO would then call in his mate who ran another IT company. And then now they would be the supplier. They'd bring his mate over here who did this, bring them in. If you watch men, they do that. Like, I have this thing about VAT. I'm a VAT registered business because of the level that I operate at. But I find that a lot of other businesses that maybe I want to work with don't have VAT. And a lot of women businesses, a lot of Black businesses. And it's frustrating because actually, if you watch men, especially white men, well, they're all VAT registered. And so they are claiming back tax and keeping it for them, like keeping more money because they operate together. And I'd have to explain how VAT works, but basically you can claim it back on what you've spent. They spend with each other, so it means that they can claim back this money. I think that's the stuff that we as women need to get really good at doing it. I mean, the truth is, let's be clear, it wasn't that long ago, in the 1970s, only in the 1970s, especially in America, that women actually could have credit. So when it's not a long period of time, but I think that we have to get with the program and stop seeing each other as competition and stop comparing ourselves or stop wanting to be the only one in the room and really start banding together. I think there are pockets, but I think there's a lot more work for us to do in this area, because actually it's the collective power that makes the biggest difference. And when we come together, I mean, the power. So you were at the Brilliant Summit. Like, this is my summit that I have for women in leadership, especially senior women. And, women in the room who let go of the shackles of competition and patriarchy and upholding. Because often there's a lot of women who uphold patriarchy. The women who do that, my God, the power, the energy that we exude is phenomenal. And so I truly believe that the more we can bandy together, the better. The more we also stop trying to take from each other, because I feel that there's also there's a lack mindset sometimes as well. And some of the businesses are very small. We we operate on a very small level. Our pricing's very low, or all of these things. And it's like, own it. Own what you bring. Charge accordingly, and let's elevate. Let's seek to elevate. I think the more we do that, the quicker we can change our world's trajectory. Roseanne, I think we've got
I we have a bit of a technical thing. I have two things that I want to talk about, or actually three things. I want to come back to the Brilliant Summit because I think it is a electrifying experience. But I want to talk about money.
yeah.
We as women, we don't have a healthy relationship with money. We love to spend it for sure. We're good at saving it sometimes, but we don't have a healthy relationship with it. We're not good at negotiating. When it comes to us, we're very good negotiating on behalf of a company or behalf
Yeah.
of someone else, or even bargaining to buy something, but we don't have um, uh, that kind of experience with money. Sometimes we don't ask for our worth. We price ourselves at very low rates. We don't negotiate salary. We don't have a healthy relationship. Where is that coming from, and how can we fix that?
I think the challenges that come from historical challenges, right? So, whether or not it was, the force to stay at home and then be provided for. And I think that that's still a narrative that it's changed, but I think we've still got a way to go. And so we shouldn't be accumulating money as such, because money equals independence. Like a simple thing, like why do we, high heels were for women not to be able to run away, for example, no pockets, so that you couldn't stash anything in your pockets. And these are all literally historical things. I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it? And even look, the simple bra, we are still wearing something that was created by a man. A lot of what we have has been created by men for women, not necessarily by women for women. And that is changing. I think with the money thing as well is, again, external validation. And so what do I mean by that? You know, and this is not all women, so I think we have to be really particularly careful about this, but we will buy the bags and the shoes, the red bottom shoes, the Louis Vuitton and the Mulberry, I have a Mulberry or two, the this and the that. And a lot of that is about putting it on to feel valuable. And actually what we need to do is get really comfortable with ownership. And I think that's, again, it's something that's going to take time. And I think there are far more women that are getting with the program, which is owning, whether it's land, owning stocks and shares and investments, owning property, even from a jewelry point of view, owning jewelry that is resellable. Even if you are going for that handbag that's resellable, that has a value. I think that the more that we can start looking this through the lens of how do we create more wealth for ourselves rather than spend more money. It doesn't mean to say you can't spend. Of course, buy yourself something, you should. But at the same time, in buying this, have I developed a wealth strategy for myself? Now, that is not my area, but Micah is coming back to the summit to talk about wealth. And so it's so important that we do those things, because what we find, and in the Caribbean, we call it she money, right? Having that money of your own, or there's some people that call it effort money, right? So if you are not happy in your role, your job, have you got enough money that you could leave if you needed to? Because sometimes we're really suffering trauma in our work experience. And so the more that we can get comfortable with money, the better. I think the other thing is really reading some good books like The Abundance Code, and going and having a look at, things like The Secret, and, books that help us to understand the law of attraction is just one of many laws. Understanding the laws around money, and also understanding that it is a social construct, and the tighter we hold on to it actually is more that we strangle it and we kind of kill it. When it comes to, I love this topic of pay rises and negotiation. My background is in sales, and so what I know for sure is this: you have to be an exceptional salesperson to negotiate up. You really are able to negotiate down. But what we do is, let's say the income range for a job is between 85,000 and 110. We're hoping for the 85. We're even maybe going, I'm going to ask for 90 because I'm currently on 85, and 90 feels, or I'm currently on 80, and that's a 10,000 increase. Well, by the time we take taxes off, what's that a month? 20 quid, 50 quid. It's not really life-changing amounts of money. And actually, you've mostly come in underpaid in the first place. So when you're looking for pay rises, go as high as you can. You should make your eyes water. I call it squeaky bum time. You kind of should be clenching, almost like, this makes me feel a little bit hysterical. But actually, if it is a higher amount of money, then we can negotiate. We may get hit somewhere in the middle. We might hit higher end. Being comfortable with saying, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking to sit here based on my skill set, based on my experience, based on what I've done. Again, this goes back to, what is your business case? What is your sales pitch? And then if you've got a sales pitch, then you need to have a price. And what is that price? The more comfortable we get, and if that means before you even get in the room, you sit down with friends and you practice saying the number, then practice it. And I have no problems with you saying it scared. I think that's often we feel the fear and we do it anyway. But you have to also, One of the other things for me is go and understand what is the range for your role. Many people have worked in a job for maybe 15 years, especially women. We bed in to a company and then we have no idea what our value is on the market. And so the more we can get to understand what is the benchmark here, then we can go, well, that's where I should sit. And so if that's where I should sit, I'm going to ask for slightly higher. Now, don't get me wrong. There is also the double jeopardy of you asked for more and they said, well, that's way too much. We're not going to have, we're not giving you the job. Sometimes we have to be okay with that because actually they don't see your value, or they are underpaying women. Like, go and have a look at what their gender gap may be. Are they underpaying women? And then you've got that information to say, well, I know that your gender gap is this, and I'm sure that you're working on it. And so really that would place me here. And saying it with your full chest. I also say these things with a smile. I love to say a number with a smile. I finish it with a smile. That's £100,000. And I smile because I'm saying I'm comfortable with it. I'm not uncomfortable here. It's not a problem for me. And these, I think, like all of this, it's practice, 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 practice. If you've never done it before, you can't just rock up and try it on your first go. So practice it so that when you do say it, it flows as opposed to stutters from your mouth. Is that helpful?
I love that. And I love the fact that it's a negotiation game and it's a sales game. And I think I remember a couple of years back, I read a book called How to Sell Yourself. And I thought it's a sales book, but it turns out it's a self-help book. And he was starting the book by saying each one of us is a salesperson at certain stage in our life.
Oh,
And you need to be able to sell yourself. And if you are able to sell yourself, you can do whatever you want to do.
I
And
agree.
I didn't grow up have a healthy relationship with money. I did not negotiate salary until I think my third or fourth role. And simply because no one actually told me that I should negotiate. Like, I always thought like this is a good offer. Until I read a book by Sheryl Sanders, and it was kind of eye-opening for me that I needed to actually negotiate. But I think it's once you start doing it, it kind of like just opens doors to a lot of things that you didn't know that it existed, kind of.
You know, I'd love to add
Um,
something. Can I
Madeline,
add something to that? Is that okay? Can I
yeah,
add something?
go
I
ahead.
I I say this a
Yeah,
lot.
sure.
Life is a sales pitch. Once you leave high school, life is a sales pitch. It doesn't matter if you go to university, you still got to sell yourself. If you go to sixth form, you've got to sell yourself into sixth form, or into college. If your first job, you've got to sell yourself. Life is a sales pitch. And the fact that you've got friends, you've sold yourself to somebody, and we need to get really comfortable with sales. But I also want to say this on negotiating when it comes to it is at the very beginning of your role, like when you first start with a company, that is the best time for you to negotiate at the very, very beginning. Also, the companies that say, oh, well, we'll start here and in 6 months we'll give you more often than not, in my experience, that doesn't happen unless you say, oh, I think I'm okay, back in the room. The second thing I would also say, so I was just saying, Roseanne, because we lost you, was that when we're life is a sales pitch, and you have to get used to selling yourself. And then again, the very beginning of when if you're going for a new role, if you're especially in a new organization, that is the best time to negotiate. And when they say, oh, we'll increase it in 6 months, is to say, well, how can we deal with that differently? Because in my experience, I would say in my experience, that rarely happens, that in 6 months' time the salary goes back up again. It's forgotten almost. And so you need to really, if they want you, they will really try and ensure that you get the salary you want. The second thing is there is more to negotiate than salary. So I actually have a 2-page, A4-page salary negotiation benefits checklist. You can negotiate for a counselor, you can negotiate for a coach, you can negotiate for 4 days working, you can negotiate for transferring you and all, you know, relocation, you can negotiate for gym membership, you can negotiate for a physiotherapy. Like, there are so many things. Or you can negotiate for a dotted line into C-suite. You can negotiate for you to sit in particular meetings. There are so many things that you can negotiate for that we don't, because we just assume, oh, well, I'm just so grateful to get the job. Actually, any interview process is a two-way street. You should be wanting to find out, do I really want to work for this company? Do they value me? Am I going to grow development? You can be saying, okay, I want to negotiate on my development track. What is my development track? Who is responsible for it? And if we're looking at 3 years, what does that look like? Like, these are really important things to negotiate on that we don't, because we're so grateful. Oh my goodness, I got the role. I'm so grateful. And it's like, we call it the Grateful Dead, because it actually just keeps you grateful forever. It's the people who go, oh, I had a client, she said, oh yeah, you know, I've got to get this role, and then I'm going to go and prove myself. And I'm like, why do you need to go and prove yourself? You just proved that you were the right person for the job. Why are you now going to spend the time proving yourself? I had another client who was given 60% of somebody else's role, but not the money. And she was like, I said, why haven't we talked about the money? And she said, well, I want to prove to them that I can do it. I said, well, the reason why they gave it to you is because you've already proved that you can do it. That's why they gave you 60% of somebody else's role, because they know you're going to fix it. And it's like, this is why we need to turn on our heads this gratitude. I love gratitude, don't get me wrong, but we are using it in the wrong way. And what we need to be able to do is go, okay, clearly I'm valuable. So if I'm valuable and you're going to give me 60% of somebody's role who was earning a substantial amount of money, then I should be getting 60% of that money. Otherwise, that cost just goes straight back into the business and becomes profit for them whilst you slave away. Sorry, I'll get off my high horse about that, but I just really wish we'd be far more strategic when it comes to negotiation.
I think I love that. And I love the fact that I think when you're talking about what else can we negotiate, like, there was things that I never actually thought of, like, and I thought I'm a good negotiator recently, but like, I negotiate stuff, I negotiate like the regular stuff, but I love what you're mentioning now. Like, there's so much stuff that we could actually negotiate. And I think what that brings to my mind is, I think it's important for us to be in rooms where this type of conversation is happening. Like, I think having this conversation, I'm now just thinking as, like, how can we extend this conversation, because I think we're not.
Have we lost her? I think we have lost Roseanne. Let's see if she comes back. Let me send her a message and tell her we've lost her. So whilst we're waiting for her, let me ask a question for those of you who are here, if you're here, and that is, what is one thing you wish you had negotiated for that you didn't? Like, if you think back about some of your negotiations, what's one thing that you wish you negotiated for that you hadn't? I'm just going to ask you, if you're here, to just put that in the chat. Roseanne, you disappeared, so I'm just asking a quick question to see if anyone's got any things that they
Yes,
didn't, or
I love that.
what is there something that you negotiated for that you were super proud of? If you can put that in the chat, that'd be great. Go ahead,
Yeah, I love
Roseanne.
that. I think that's a brilliant question. So I actually, that took me to, I wanted the question, the Brilliant Summit. I was there last year. I was in a room where there is over 400 other women, and we literally spent a full day, like from 9 until I think 6 or 7.
Yeah.
And the energy was insane. The conversations were like, I walked away, like I never talked about pension and how women do pension different than men. I never talked about, like, there was kind of insane conversation in that room. And I wanted to ask you first to tell people a bit about the Brilliant Summit that's coming in. But I also want you to tell us why it's important to have spaces like the Brilliant Summit, something that's different. It does not look like a regular summit that you win and you sit and you just listen to people talking.
No, it really does not. For me, the thing about the Brilliant Summit is I wanted to create a space where women really could step into their brilliance, and where we could share, the Brilliant Summit is a how-to summit where we can share the how-tos for women, because sometimes we have gatekeepers in leadership as women who aren't necessarily sharing the how-tos. And if you look at men, like the old men's clubs, if you look at the way they are, that they're on the golf course sharing and having all these conversations, and it's like, and even conferences, it's so important that we have spaces where we are sharing information, and not just, because I think we're quite good at sharing stories. I wanted us to share actionable insights, real takeaways that you could go and implement, like the moment you left the room. In fact, you might even start implementing them in the room. I think that there were some things that were implemented in the room, right? And I wanted the audience to hear from senior women across race as well, and cultures. So for me, it's important to have like Black women, South Asian women, Pacific Asian women, Middle Eastern women, in order to, Hispanic women, white women. You're like, just being able to really, like, there's so many times you go and you don't see yourself when you're in a conference. I'm of Caribbean heritage. I love music and I love to dance. And so one of the things for me that's truly important is that we do it our way. Like, we don't need to do it in a stuffy way, in a so corporate that we can't even breathe in the environment. And I wanted it to feel like sisterhood, and that we would let go of those shackles of patriarchy and competitism, if I can say the word, in comparison, where we could show up as who we really were and enjoy it. And so the Brilliant Summit is literally about, as we talked about at the top of this conversation, embracing your own brilliance and learning from the brilliance of others. And so it's just such a space of education, but not just education, having the opportunity to go and ask who is speaking, a question. What was beautiful in the room is that, SJ is COO of Saatchi & Saatchi, and then Colette Phillips, Brand by Me, SJ does this speech, and there's lots of learning and things and how-tos. And then Colette comes up in Q&A and says, "You were my first boss. I learned so much from you." And then there's a moment where they hug. Like, isn't that wonderful that is the kind of thing, everybody dances onto stage with a song, that's inspiring and uplifting. There's music throughout the entire day, great food, great networking. It's like, there are some panels. you know, amazing women sitting on those panels, amazing women speaking, and then there are speeches, and we have a limit. I mean, this year we'll have 3 panels and 5 speeches. Last year we had 6 panels and 2 panels and 6 speeches. There's a reason why every session is 44 minutes, because what we don't want to do is we don't want you to go away and feel drained. We want you to go away and feel elevated, and I think everybody did. And so this space, again, is to the need that you've raised, Rizan, is a space where we share the IP, the collective knowledge, so that we can all elevate. That, you know, what do they call it? A rising tide. Yes, a rising tide like lifts all ships. That's the Brilliant Summit. It is the opportunity to everybody in the room to be lifted up, to be inspired, to elevate their personal development so they can leverage it for their professional success. So that's the reason for the Brilliant Summit, and it is a phenomenal day. Coming back on the 26th of June this year.
It is. It was phenomenal, and I've flown to London. I didn't know what to expect, to be honest. I always loved your energy. I knew that any room where you are, it will have a really amazing energy. But I walked away so full, in so many ways. Like, I think, first of all, for the first time, there was no single sales pitch in that room. Like, it was people sharing real information, like no gatekeeping. The energy was amazing. I was just getting to know people left, right, and center, and some people I'm friend with now. So it was an amazing thing. I'm reading the chat, and I'm loving what I'm reading here. Someone said, Rochelle, she said she's proud of negotiating work from home in before the pandemic. It allowed her to spend time with her family. She said she negotiated with her director to attend LSE, a leading change course that is in part of my organization, learning development, team development courses. I love that.
You know, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. You know, I think we should remember, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. And if you do ask, you've got a 50-50 chance of getting a yes. So why would you sit there and not ask? Just ask, you know? And we've got a question, actually, Rizan. It says, how can I determine?
You lose
nothing. You lose nothing, because it was a no already, right? It was a no already. We have a question, which is, how can I determine if you have the necessary skills for executive level leadership roles? And Valerie Kuju says, you know, it's shadowing leaders in meetings. I think you also have to educate yourself too. So it's not just, the skill sets are things like delegation. They are things like strategic thinking and planning. They are things like understanding the commercials as well of the business. It's also about understanding, and with that commercials, things like understanding what makes the business tick, executive presence, being able to own the room, being also able to ask and difficult questions, but also find solutions as well. It's no use being the miserable person who always has a problem but never has a solution. You know, when you're sitting at leadership level, you've got to also be able to sometimes surrender your own opinion for the greater good as well as be able to be okay with conflict management and friction. One of the really good books for reading around leadership, for me, I love this, and when I'm working with a leadership team, it's a book that I use, and I use in table groups work, which is and it's an allegory which makes it really easy to ease, which is the 5 dysfunctions of a team. Absolutely love that book. There are a whole range of, there's an inner leadership book as well, I can't remember what it's called. There's a number of leadership books that are really worthwhile engaging with, because then you can start seeing, where do I sit against this? Definitely as well, speaking to senior leaders, spending time with them to understand what it looks like on the other side, because it sounds like, oh yeah, I want to be a leader, but it's actually, have you got the grit for it? And you do need some grit to be able to do that. Can you hold your corner and stand by what you say? And if you can't, then you will get swallowed up in a leadership team very, very quickly. So there are a whole range of things to do when it comes to working out. And I would definitely say, get yourself on leadership. If there are training, management training, leadership training, any of the professional developments training, you need soft skills too. You need people skills. Like, you need to be able to get the best out of your team, understand difference. You also need to learn how to swallow your own ego and pride. You should be able to say sorry to your team too when you've made a mistake, and you should also be able to take responsibility for anything that team has done and not blame individual team members. It takes a backbone of steel to sit at executive level, especially as a woman.
Yeah, I love that. And I think I had a very enlightening conversation a couple of years back with a mentor. When I was having a conversation with him, I was saying, I don't think I am ready for this position. And he said to me, you don't need to be ready. Start before you are.
Absolutely.
Get there. Be consciously aware that you're going to make mistakes. And as you said, Madeleine, be consciously ready to fail, to make mistake, and be ready to own those mistakes and say sorry and step forward and say, I made a mistake and this is how I am going to fix it. I think a fundamental difference between us men and women is a man might never ask that question. They will jump on it and then they will figure it out. We,
Yeah.
as part of our perfectionism thing, we want to make sure that we can do it right before we do it. And I think the only way to do it right is to try and do it
Yes.
wrong and then get it right the next time.
Yeah, I say
And
make mistakes.
I would
You know?
say if you're doubting, just go for it.
Yeah, because you most probably have most of what you need already. And the rest of it you will learn on the job, because you can never learn it all beforehand anyway. And I think that this thing of, we we all know leaders who aren't great, but they went for it. And they're sitting in leadership positions, not because they're the best leader,
Yeah.
but because they were the most bolshy and determined to get there, And some of it, it goes back to somebody
Yeah.
was saying, network. A lot of roles aren't necessarily based on the interviews, they're based on who you know, not what you know. So having that network is why I have my leadership lounge. It's for women in leadership to network with each other, because we need to be nurturing and growing our networks. Sometimes, because we're so deep in the weeds, hoping that what we're doing in the job is going to get us the promotion, we're not actually working on the relationships that can get us the promotion. And actually, one of the topics from last year is we should also be ready to leave with grace and not fear. Because if the environment isn't working for us, if we're not getting the promotions, if we're not getting the pay rises, if we're not being recognized, and let's be honest, there's a lot of women who are doing phenomenal work, but they are not being recognized, then maybe we're in the wrong soil. Maybe it's time to plant ourselves in different soil. And so you might need to start interviewing, especially if you haven't been interviewing for quite some time.
Yeah. I think it's also important to know when to let go and when to walk away. I think there's a lot of power in that. Madeleine,
Mm.
we got a couple of minutes to go, but my biggest question that I want to close with is, how do I step into a room, wherever that room is, a meeting room, a boardroom, a training room, and own that room? How do
Oh,
I do that?
you know what? I love this question. I will say you have to
I
walk
know you
into
do.
like you deserve to be there. I walk into every, I don't care where I'm going. I'm going to walk in like I deserve to be, but I don't care who's in it. I know a lot of people. I know celebrities. I know, big, well-known people. I don't care, because as far as I'm concerned, if you poo and you wipe your backside, I poo and wipe my backside. You are not better than me. You are just somebody who's done maybe slightly different things to me. And I know that might sound a bit, oh, Madeline, really? And I'm like, yeah, really. Because when you put everybody on a human level, you stop elevating them and making yourself feel less than. And then what happens is when you walk into the room, you know you deserve to be there. I deserve to be there because I'm a human being on this planet. End of. Full stop. We don't need to go anywhere else, period. And I think that the more you get into the habit of, I love the power pose. You stand with your legs shoulder width apart, you lift your body up, you raise your chin, you put your shoulders back, lift your chest slightly. We're not doing this. But and you walk in, you say to yourself, I can, and you walk in like you deserve to be there. That's how you earn the room. I have watched senior people creep into rooms like they didn't deserve to be there, even though that they were at a senior, super senior level. And I remember pulling one woman aside and I said, don't let me ever see you do that again. Don't ever walk into a room like you're apologizing for being there. And so if you want to own the room, get to know who you are and what you bring to the table, and that what you bring to the table has validity, because everybody else is having sometimes the same issues as you in their thinking. And the other thing is that know that you bring value to every room that you are in, because nobody on this planet has your experience. Nobody has gone through what you've gone through. They might have done the same job, but they may not have done it in the same team or in the same company, or a whole plethora of different things. So the more you move your body in a way that lets your brain know she means it, let me tell you, your energy when you walk into a room is completely different. I don't care where I'm walking into. I walk down, if it's an aisle, if it's whatever, if it's a church, if it's a whatever the bill, wherever, I walk in there like I deserve to be there. I walk in with my head high. I never walk in with my head down, ever, because I deserve to be there. And so do you.
I love that. I love that. I want to say that one of the reasons that I'm having this conversation live with you today is you teaching me how to own the room. Because I remember when I came to you the first time, I said one of the things that I am not comfortable with is being on a stage and or in front of a camera. And your challenge for me was to go and find an event and speak at that event. And my first time was a total disaster. But then the second time was better. And then later I started this lives, and it gave me a lot of um, like a lot of joy. I'm enjoying it. I'm doing it. I'm not the best at it. I'm still
Oh,
learning,
you do it
but
well. You do it
I
well.
think thank you. But I think stepping into the room and not shrink, not to go and sit in the back seat, sit in the front, your chest high, and just owning your space, and that energy will be felt by other people. Um, so taking a pause, asking questions, very, very even strong and powerful, yet simple questions. Um, room where the discussions are happening, having someone to talk to. I think women do not understand how important to have a coach, a mentor, and someone that you have the right chemistry with. That's a very important thing. Someone
Mm.
can understand and can relate to whatever you've been through, or you've been whatever you're going through, and being in spaces where there's other women that they're speaking about what they're going through, and at the end just own own that room, whatever room you're stepping in. It's the room where your friends are, your neighbors are, the people who don't like you, the people who likes you, a meeting room, a boardroom, whatever it is. Step in and own that space. It's going to be uncomfortable at the beginning, but then you will get used to it. um Madeleine, as always, like I can go on and on and on talking to you for like hours, hours and hours, and I always enjoy the conversation. And I hope people who were with us today enjoyed it. I'm sure they did. But I want to leave it to you to wrap it up and close today.
Oh, I really appreciate the time. I appreciate
Oh,
you having me. And I will say to the women here, you deserve so much more. And sometimes that means you need to move out of your own way. Um, you need to invest in yourself because you're worthy of the investment. And what's also important is to stop apologizing for your very existence. You know, the more that even just stop saying sorry. It doesn't mean to say you're not saying, maybe find a different way of saying it, but stop saying sorry. And just own your space. But all of this becomes practice. Practice makes, we were told this as children, and maybe we didn't like to hear it so much. But the truth of the matter is that if you really want different, then yes, you need to learn. But once you've learned, you've got to practice. And the more you stretch that comfort zone, the more you know you're capable of doing, the more you know you can stretch the comfort zone. So I will give you, each of you today, a challenge to, I can guarantee that every one of you most probably has something that what you want to do that maybe you haven't done. Some of you have gone and doing great things, I'm sure, many of you, but I'm sure there's a little something that you've wanted to do that you've held back from doing for whatever reason, maybe because of what people like. For example, I'm going to very quickly, and I know we've got to go, but a few years ago, maybe
no,
about
it's okay.
like
It's
years
okay. Take your
ago,
time.
I was so stressed. I was managing so many different things, and I decided the one thing I no longer wanted to manage was my hair. And so I took 3 pairs of scissors and a knife file. It was the children's scissors, and I cut all my hair off. And it was so liberating because I am not my hair. And, it was just great. And although I did look a bit crazy, so I had to go and get it done properly. And there were so many women who said, oh my goodness, I would love to do that, but I don't think my husband would like it. Oh, my mum wouldn't be really happy with me. These are grown ass women. And I'm like, when your husband shaves his beard or grows his beard or cuts his hair, does he ask you? Does he consider whether or not you do it? Like your mum will do whatever she wants to do. You're grown. And I think that we need to take some agency over ourselves, over our own bodies, and find a thing. I would say, I'm going to challenge each of you to find a thing that maybe you've held yourself back from doing that you really wanted to do, but for what you thought other people might think, whatever, you didn't do it, and go do it. Do it. Or plan to do it, right? Like, oh, I wanted to go and visit here. And even if you think you don't have enough money, start putting the money aside, £20 a month, whatever it might be, right? £100 a month. Go looking for different ways to make it happen, because I'm sure there are lots of different ways you can make it happen. Go looking for those people who are always traveling and have got all the hacks. Go make something happen, because the more you do the things that fill you, the more you'll do the things that fill you. And so I just want you to live your best, because this life, honest, I am 55, about to be 56. I'm like, where the hell did this time go? Oh my goodness. And so, you know what? the
Right.
time is ticking. The time's ticking. I don't have time to sit here going, what will so and so think? I only have time to do the things that I want to do for me, that float my boat, that make me feel amazing. And that means that then it fills my cup. And when my cup is full, I can give freely from my overflow. So go do you. You're worth it. That's what I will say.
I love that. I just something I did 11 of Madeline challenge. So after every session, she asked me to do something, and she would hold you accountable. Before she would tell you you have to do it, and then you have, before the next session, you have to tell her what you have done. And all of them were amazing. Some of them had changed my life, and I will forever be grateful for that. So go and do that. I promise you, it's going to be a life changing. Madeline, thank you so much for being here today. Everyone who joined us today, thank you for being here, and we will meet next month.
Thank you so much, Razan. It
Madeline?
has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, Rosanna. It has been a pleasure.